All right, so um, all right, so today is gonna be real world problems. Um, Honestly, we've already done all the stuff, so you can kind of recognize what type of problem it is and apply that type of problem that we've already gone over. Right? Listen, I'm saying this for the video, but if anyone has a phone or a laptop open, all Miss Ortiz got to do is call me, and then I'll come get the phone or laptop or remove the student if needed. But I need you guys paying attention, copying notes. Don't lack, because on Friday is your test. All right, so we're going to look at the Montana question. So it says you travel from Fort Peck Lake to Glacier National Park. So we're starting from here, and we're traveling that direction. Then it says, and from Glacier National Park to Granite Peak, and then we're traveling this direction. It says write two inequalities that to represent the possible distances from Granite Peak to Fort Peck. Does anyone remember um, what type of problem this is? What are we're looking for, what we're trying to find, or how we find those inequalities? No? So if we look back, let's see if I can find this. If we look back here, you guys remember how we can find the possible values for x? Does anyone remember? Do you have them in your notes? What do we do with the two sides? We add and subtract. So 10 plus 7, that equals 17. So what does x have to be? Does x have to be greater than or less than 17? Less than 17. There's one inequality. And then what do we do? What's the next thing we do? Subtract 10 minus 7, which equals 3. And x has to be what? X has to be greater than 3. So if we keep that same, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the range. Right? So what would we do with those two numbers? So we add them. $565 plus 489, 1054. So what does x have to be? X has to be less than 1054. Right? And then what's the other thing we do? Subtract. So 565 minus 49, 76. So x has to be greater than the number already, 76. Any question about part A? Good at part A? Okay. Part B, it says, how is your answer to part A affected if you know that angle 2 is greater than angle 1 and angle 2 is less than angle 3? So what's the smallest angle? One is the smallest, right? And what side is opposite to 1? What side, not angle? 2, 3, or 489, right? This side? So, and what side is the next biggest, or what angle is the next biggest angle? 2, right? So 2 would be the next biggest. And then what would be the biggest angle? 3 would be the biggest angle. So that means, what do we know about this side? That's the biggest side. So if they're telling me that, how do my range for x change? What's the smallest x can be? Because x represents this side, right? So we know that x is bigger than what side? It's bigger than 49, right? So we know that on this side it's going to be bigger than 49 because 49 is the smallest side of that triangle. But we know that it's smaller than what? It's smaller than 565 because 565 is the biggest side of that triangle. Do we understand? Any questions? Let's go to this next question. So you see how marking up the triangle really helped me kind of visualize that? That's what you guys gotta be comfortable marking up the triangles so you can understand, help you understand the question better, you can answer it better. All right, the second question. Triangles 1 and 2 represent distances from group A and group B bike from and back to camp. So we have, this is our camp. I don't want to use pretty. This is our camp. And we'll say this distance is X. And we'll say this distance is Y. Okay. Write two inequalities to represent the possible total distance from and back to camp. Okay. So this angle here is 30 degrees. What would be the measure of this angle here? Huh? What would it be? 50? 150. That's right. That would be 150. Right? And then if this angle here is 45, what would be the measure of this angle here? What would be the measure of that angle? 135, right? How'd you get 135? Correct, they're a linear pair. So 180 minus 45 is 135. So if you notice this side, 1.2, is the same as this side, 1.2, right? And if you notice, this side 2 is the same as this side 2. So what do we know about x and y? which is bigger, X or Y? Why is Y bigger? Come on, guys. Why is Y bigger? You guys remember if I had two sides that were the same, if I had two angles that were the same or two sides, but one angle is bigger than the other, what do we know about these two distances? How does the angle affect the distance? If this angle is smaller than this angle, what do we know about this distance and that distance? Let's call this A and B. What's bigger, A or B? Why is B bigger? Because the angle is bigger, right? So which one of these has a bigger angle? X has the is opposite to the bigger angle, right? Because that angle is 150, this angle is 135. So I know that it says write two inequalities that represent the total distance from and back to the camp. So I label it X. I'm going to say X plus 1.2 plus 2. Hold on. Okay, so before we get to what's bigger, how do we find the possible range for X? We add 1.2 and 2, that gives us 3.2. And what does X have to be? Less than or equal to 3.2? Less than 3.2. And then what do we do? Subtract 2 minus 1.2 equals 0.8. X has to be greater than 0.8. Same thing for Y. But yeah, so we can say that Y has to be less than 3.2 but greater than 0.8, right? So, but we know that, so those are the inequalities, right? But which one has to be bigger? X has to be greater than Y. So, I mean, that's basically it. Any question about that? All right. What question does this look like? Or what type of question does this look like? Like, what is this? What's this line here? Mid segment, right? So you should automatically think about mid segments. All right, so let's read the question. It says, Pear Street intersects Cherry Street and Peach Street at their midpoints. So this is the midpoint of Peach Street, and this is the midpoint of Cherry Street. So right away, what's this half of Cherry Street? What's that measure? 1.3, because it's half and the other half is that. How would you figure out what each half of Peach Street measures? Anyone? divided by 2. So 2.25 divided by 2, 1.125. So each part here measures 1.125, 1.125. How do we figure out what Pear Street measures? Half of 1.4 because they're parallel. See? Let's pay attention. 1.4 divided by 2, 0.7. So I know that Pear Street is 0.7. Okay. So it says you leave your home and jog down. Oh, and it says your home is point P. So you start here. It says you leave your home and you jog down Cherry Street to Plum Street. So you go all the way down here. What's that distance? 2.6, okay? So far we've jogged 2.6. Then it says to Plum Street, and then Plum Street, you jog down to Peach Street. So what's that distance? What's the distance of Plum Street? 1.4, right? Then it says over to Plum Street to Peach Street, and then up Peach Street to Pear Street. So all the way to here. What's that distance? Only to Pear. Now the whole way up, halfway. 1.125. Then it says over Pear Street to Cherry Street. So you go across Pear Street. What's that distance? 0.7. And then to Cherry Street and then back home. So from here back home, what's that distance? 1.3. So then what do we do to get our answer? Add them all up. So 2.6 plus 1.4 plus 1.125 plus 0.7 plus 1.3. Seven 7.125. That's the total distance you jog, and this is in miles. Any questions? All right. So then you guys have the rest of the real world problems to do on your packet. And then tomorrow, you guys will have a review packet, or maybe we'll give it to you today. But because Friday's your test, I may or may not come in tomorrow to answer questions or not. We'll see how busy I am. But yeah.